Something deeply disturbing happened to these missing people. In today's video, we are going to take a look at Gone.Files, an account I stumbled across a few weeks ago while aimlessly scrolling on TikTok. I have to give all the flowers to this creator for doing all the research, finding these pictures, making these really short, digestible videos on missing people. And to be honest, I just want to share some of the more crazy ones I'd never heard of before with you. Get yourself a brew, get yourself some snacks, and get ready to potentially question your relationships with every single person that you know. POV, you fall behind a freezer and they only find you 10 years later. In 2009, a 25-year-old man named Larry Eli Murillo-Moncada, I think that's correct, I'm sorry if I butchered it, disappeared in Council Bluffs, Iowa. His family reported him missing after he left home during a snowstorm without shoes, car, or phone. Despite searches, there were no clues. For years, his disappearance remained a mystery. 10 years later, in 2019, a bizarre discovery was made. Workers renovating a closed supermarket came across human remains hidden in a narrow gap between the back of a freezer unit and a wall. The space was only about 45 centimetres wide, about this much, nearly impossible to see into. Authorities later confirmed that the body was in fact Larry's. His shoes and clothes matched the description from the time he vanished. Investigators believe that he somehow entered the supermarket after hours. It had once been his workplace, and climbed onto the top of the freezers. They think that he may have slipped and fallen into the small space where he then became trapped. Because the freezers were loud and the gap was concealed, no one heard him or noticed anything unusual. For a decade, Larry remained hidden just a few meters away from daily shoppers and staff. His discovery was both tragic and deeply unsettling. A missing person case solved in the most unexpected place. The thing I can't fathom with this particular case is how nobody smelt the decomposition of his body. He was there for 10 years. Like, how did nobody ever pull the freezer out to clean behind it or do any maintenance on it? It just makes no sense that he was just there for that amount of time. Can you even begin to fathom what he must have felt during the first few minutes of being trapped in there? It reminds me of the guy that got trapped in that Nutty Putty cave, I think it was. It's just unfathomable. I feel horrendous for his family, but also relieved that they managed to locate his body at bare minimum. POV, you found a Polaroid photo, two people tied up, one of them disappeared in 1988 and was never seen again. On September 20, 1988, 19-year-old Tara Calico went for her usual bike ride in Belen, New Mexico. She told her mum to come looking for her if she wasn't back by noon, but she never returned. Later, her Walkman and cassette pieces were found along the road, as if they'd been intentionally broken. Her pink bike was never recovered. Witnesses reported seeing a pickup truck following her. Almost a year later, a Polaroid photo was found in a parking lot in Florida, over 1,600 miles away. It showed a girl and a young boy tied up and gagged in the back of a van. The girl looked just like Tara. Next to her was one of her favourite books. But police never confirmed it was really her. No one was ever charged. Tara Calico is still missing to this day. Now, even though I don't have children of my own, learning about this case kind of put me into the mind frame of being one of her parents. The idea that this picture emerges after your child's gone missing, one with their favourite book in the picture too, is just harrowing. I don't even know what you do as a parent. How on earth does a Polaroid appear over 1,600 miles away in a car park in Florida where you went missing in New Mexico? It doesn't make sense. She's never been heard from. She's never been found. Genuinely nothing more to say other than just deeply, deeply sad. POV, you're eating dinner, you bite into something tough and suddenly realise it's human meat. In February of 2000 in New South Wales, Australia, police entered the home of Catherine Knight. They found John Price, her boyfriend, 37 times, but that was only the beginning. It'd been skinned, decapitated and cooked. His head was found boiling in a pot of vegetables. On the table, 2 plates of meat labelled with the names of his children. Catherine had written a twisted note blaming John for her actions. She was found passed out beside the crime scene after taking pills. She became the first woman in Australian history sentenced to life without parole, and to this day she shows no remorse. The one and only thing I took from this that I was glad about was the fact that she didn't from her OD attempt. the fact that she will have to spend the rest of her life in jail. According to Google's AI overview, Catherine Knight left a blood-stained and chilling handwritten note on top of a photograph of her partner John Price after murdering him in 2000. The note contained false accusations and was filled with grammatical errors. The accusations made against Price were later found to be baseless. It's a sad reality that people make up baseless accusations for their own gain and to incriminate other people for things that they didn't do. However, going through with such a heinous act on both your partner and his children for probably having major differences is just abhorrent. It's just unbelievably hard to comprehend. And again, I'm just grateful that she ended up not only alive after trying to take her own life, but then in prison where she can hopefully just suffer. You receive a voicemail at night from your husband. He sounds strange, frightened, with eerie noises in the background, and then he disappears. Henry McCabe was a 32-year-old man originally from Liberia, living in Minnesota with his family. On the night of September 6th, 2015, he went out with friends to a club in the city of Spring Lake Park. Around 2 a.m, Henry's friends said they dropped him off at a gas station. He didn't have his wallet or ID with him, but he still had his phone. A few hours later, his wife received a disturbing voicemail from Henry's phone. On the recording, Henry's voice sounded confused, distressed, and there were strange noises in the background. At one point, a calm male voice could be heard saying, "Stop it." That voicemail became one of the most haunting clues in the case. Henry never came home that night. Weeks later, in November, his body was discovered in a nearby lake. Authorities said his death was consistent with drowning, but many questions remain. Why did he sound so terrified on the call? Who was the man's voice on the voicemail? And how did he end up in the water? The idea that your partner goes out with friends, people that they and you probably hopefully trust, and doesn't return is just incomprehensible. I can't fathom what his partner must have been feeling, let alone what Henry actually went through. The fact that the death was consistent with drowning reminded me of a woman called Helen Nyabuto, I believe is how you pronounce it, who died while streaming herself swimming in a pool on Facebook. She basically couldn't swim, the water was too deep, and in an effort to call for help, she'd lost her life. It was so tragic, and I do wonder whether or not that is what happened in the case of Henry McCabe. I appreciate there was speculation around foul play, but you have to work with what was provided, and because there was no suspicion of foul play and the death by drowning kind of seemed legit, I would imagine that that is potentially what happened, although why he would have gone into a lake at 2 a.m. or even after that is beyond me. But truly sad and yeah, just crazy. POV, you disappear 3 times, but the last time you're never found. Hannah Upp was a young teacher from Oregon, living and working in New York City. In 2008, something very unusual happened. She went for a run and never came back. Her friends and family searched everywhere, but there was no trace of her. 3 weeks later, she was found alive, floating in the New York harbor. Miraculously, she'd survived, but she had no memory of what happened during those missing weeks. Doctors explained she was suffering from a rare condition called dissociative fugue, I believe, a type of amnesia where a person can lose their identity and wander without realizing it. After this, Hannah tried to return to a normal life. She continued teaching, even moving to Maryland and later to the Caribbean, where she loved working with children. But in 2013, she vanished again for 2 days, later being found safe but confused. In 2017, while living in St. Thomas, she disappeared for the 3rd time. Her car was discovered near a beach with her phone, wallet, and keys inside. Despite extensive searches, Hannah was never found again. Her story is both tragic and fascinating, a reminder of how mysterious the human mind can be. Hannah's case shows how someone can be physically present but mentally lost, and how deeply rare conditions like dissociative fugue can change a life. After learning about this case, I actually have this feeling that she might still be alive somewhere, which would be wonderful, if at all possible. I hope that if I ever revisit this case in years to come, that the news has kind of surfaced that she was found safe. You'd like to think that because she went missing twice before and was found, that the 3rd time she would equally be found. But at this point, it's been over 8 years, and the likelihood that she actually will be found is quite slim. Unless she's changed her identity and is absolutely okay. Maybe she got fed up of people and decided to do one, but I don't think that that's the case. He calls you, says he likes you, but also says he'd take you away, and one day you just disappear. Dorothy Jane Scott was a kind, quiet woman from California. She was 32 years old, a single mother who lived with a 4-year-old son. She worked as a secretary, lived a calm life, and wasn't the type to get into trouble. But for months, Dorothy had been receiving strange phone calls. A man would call her house again and again. Sometimes he said he loved her and watched her every day. Other times his voice changed cold and threatening. He once told her, "I'll get you soon." Dorothy was scared. She even told her friends she recognised the man's voice but couldn't remember where from. On the night of May 28, 1980, she attended a work meeting. During it, one of her co-workers suddenly felt sick, so Dorothy offered to drive him to the hospital. She waited with him until he was feeling better. Around 11 p.m, she went to get her car from the parking lot. Her co-worker and another friend waited outside the hospital doors. They saw Dorothy's car, a white Toyota, drive past them fast, its headlights blinding as if someone was in a hurry. They tried to wave her down, but the car didn't stop. At first they thought it was an emergency, but Dorothy never came home. Hours later, her car was found burning in an alley miles away. Nobody was inside. Weeks turned into months with no answers. Then the phone rang. Dorothy's mother answered. It was him. The same man who had been calling before her disappearance. He said softly, "Are you missing Dorothy?" He kept calling every Wednesday for years. 4 years later, Dorothy's remains were found in a remote area. The man on the phone was never identified, and no arrests were ever made. This case is just devastating. I think the idea of having not only a stalker, but someone that eventually leads on to literally take a life is just otherworldly. It's crazy how fixated some people can get, and in an effort to be closer to them can do shit like this. But the fact that a little boy was left behind and a family to then years later find the remains of her is just insane. And even more disturbing is the fact that the guy was never caught, at least that we know of, and I wonder how many more people he did this with, because I could almost bet money that this wasn't his only victim. POV. You see a mother pushing a child on a swing for hours, but something feels off. The child isn't moving at all. In May of 2015, a woman named Romechia was seen at a Maryland park pushing her 3-year-old son, Gia, is that right? On a swing for nearly 2 full days. When police arrived, they discovered the unimaginable. The child had been dead the entire time. Gia had died from dehydration and hypothermia. Romechia, who suffered from schizophrenia, had a psychotic episode. She believed she was protecting her son. She wasn't violent, she just didn't realise that he'd passed. She was later charged with manslaughter and neglect, but after a psychiatric evaluation, the court found her not criminally responsible. Instead of prison, she was ordered to undergo mandatory mental health treatment. This tragic case raised difficult questions about mental illness, motherhood, and justice, and what happens when the system fails to help in time. Now, this is incredibly sad. I have zero experience when it comes to psychotic episodes. I know nothing about schizophrenia, but this just does speak volumes to the failures of the system. Surely she should have had some more support. I imagine that her schizophrenia would have been on record for a long period of time leading up to this event. And the fact that the little lad ended up in this situation is just heartbreaking. It kind of reminds me of a lady called Rhonda Paulinese, and I only heard about her case a few weeks ago. She performed an exorcism on her son and subsequently killed him and left the body in her house. And when the police went to do a welfare check, because there was like body cam footage of at least before they'd found him, they went to do a welfare check. She was outside the house, and at first she seemed really evasive, like she was trying to just get more time before they eventually entered the house, but she quite willingly let them in, and obviously then they found his body, and it's just so sad. I am not the person to come up with a solution to such a devastating problem. It's awful. I'm going to leave the video there, but once again to give all the flowers to Gone.Files for doing the research on the cases I went over today. I hope that you learned something new, and if you enjoyed videos like this, then please feel free to subscribe. If you would like me to look at any other cases that you found particularly interesting, then let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to include them in a future video. I will see you next time, and thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.